Okay, we are good to go on YouTube, and it looks like we're good to go with captionings, and we're obviously good to go on Zoom. So once we get to 12:30, Chair Hart, we'll be good to go.
Sounds like a plan.
Excellent.
Thank you for setting it up.
Okay, we are good to go on YouTube, and it looks like we're good to go with captionings, and we're obviously good to go on Zoom. So once we get to 12:30, Chair Hart, we'll be good to go.
Okay, so for those of you who are listening in one form or another, this is the 2-minute warning that will be starting at 12:30.
Max, we heard your comments about being good to go twice with about a 20-second delay. So maybe we're getting the YouTube audio restreamed into the live meeting.
That may have been my
good to go on YouTube. Like we're good to go with
I think
captionings, and we're obviously good to
Andrea
go.
had,
So once we get to 12:30, Chair Hart, we'll be good to go.
Andrea and I were both confirming that the YouTube is working. So Andrea just needs to close her YouTube window. We were just confirming that the stream was actually working. So Andrea just needs to turn off the YouTube window. Andrea just needs to close her or mute her YouTube window. That may have been my
Good to go on YouTube. Like we're good to go with captionings, and we're obviously good to go.
Andrea had,
So once we get to 12:30, Chair Hart, we'll be good to go.
Andrea and I were both confirming that the YouTube is working. So Andrea just needs to close her YouTube window. We were just confirming that the stream was actually working. So Andrea just needs to turn off the YouTube window. Andrea just needs to close her or mute her YouTube window. That may have been my,
This is deja vu all over again.
Oh, okay, we're good to go.
With a minute to spare.
Oh.
Not even close. Is everybody good to go? Okay.
We're good.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hereby call this remote meeting of the Washington Metro Region Safety Commission to order. The meeting is being recorded and it is also being streamed live for the public. So to make this meeting as accessible as possible, closed captioning is also available. If you are on Zoom, click the closed captioning button to turn the captions on or off. Ms. Foltz, do we have a quorum today?
Because we are meeting remotely, I will call the roll to make sure that we have a quorum and that the minutes accurately reflect today's participants and that we account for all alternates in the event any commissioner has connectivity issues. When I call your name, please answer with present, and I will pause after each name to allow for the delay. Commissioner Hart.
Present.
Commissioner Bob. I see that Commissioner Bob is connected. He needs to be muted.
You're muted, Commissioner Bob. Move on to the next one and come back
I'll
to him.
continue to call the roll and I'll watch for his whether he unmutes. Commissioner Contestable.
Present.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke.
Present.
Commissioner Hull.
Present.
Alternate Commissioner Rush.
he's just joined as an attendee. He just needs to be promoted. I would also recommend we skip to the next one and
Okay.
we address that.
Alternate Commissioner Al-Khatib.
Present.
And alternate Commissioner Wassmer.
Present.
And welcome. I see Commissioner Alternate Commissioner Rush has joined. I'm calling the roll and just wanted to make sure that you declare yourself present.
I am present. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I see that Commissioner Bob is connected. We can confirm as we go.
Present.
Thank you very much. Chair Hart, we do have a quorum, and I would like to point out that we have a quorum of members. So in accordance with Section 8 of the compact, the only alternate who will be voting today will be alternate Commissioner Rush, who is sitting for Commissioner Rosenker.
Okay, thank you for the quorum, for calling the quorum, Ms. Fultz. Now I will turn the microphone over to Richard Davis, the WMSC Safety Officer.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The safety message today is about the emergency response throughout the Metro Rail system. It's always important to be prepared and have a plan in case of an emergency, including in the Metro Rail system. But before I get to that, I would also like to remind everyone that COVID-19 is still here and the coronavirus continues to spread. The national health emergency created by COVID-19 is very much a crisis affecting the health of each of our citizens. So please wear your mask, wash your hands, and practice social distancing. Emergency response. Emergency response takes a 24/7 team effort. That includes the person who calls 911 or otherwise reports an issue, the dispatchers, first responders, and sometimes bystanders. In the Metro Rail system, preparing for and dealing with an emergency safely takes a broad group, including WMATA's Rail Operations Control Center, other operational staff, emergency repair teams, the Metro Transit Police Department, Metro's Office of Emergency Management, and many others across the National Capital Region. Critical to this, there are 8 local fire departments who respond to Metro Rail incidents, and the fire department's fire liaison in the ROCC, who works to ensure the safety of Metro Rail customers, workers, and the surrounding communities. Emergency response for the fire department begins with a 911 call. This call, regardless of origin, goes through a dispatch system. Certain algorithms are used to determine the types of calls and then the resources allocated for the appropriate response. Once units arrive on scene, the fire and rescue departments will set up an incident command system to ensure the effective use of resources that was dispatched. In a Metro Rail emergency, the fire liaison at the control center coordinates with incident management, the incident commander, the Metro Transit Police, staff from Metro Emergency Management Team, and the rail superintendent as an integral part of the command structure. The goal is to work together to expeditiously and safely provide the necessary assistance and return Metro Rail to normal, safe service. Each of these emergencies are unique. For riders, that can mean varying levels of disruptions or risk. This is why instructions and information provided by Metro Rail and first responders is critical. For safety is the priority. We at the WMSC are focused on these critical safety practices. We oversee emergency response and training. We emphasize the importance of continuous safety improvement. This is personal for us. Each one of us at the WMSC also works within and rides the Metro Rail system. Our friends and families do too. Again, everyone's safety is the priority. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Now, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our June 18th, 2020 meeting. Commissioner Farrar Dyke, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. The minutes were posted for your review. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, I move approval of the June 18 minutes as circulated. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Hart has made second the motion. I move approval of the June 18th minutes as corrected just now. All in favor? Oh, I guess Commissioner Allison Holtz will take a roll call vote since we're online.
Yes, since we're remote, and again, as before, I will pause briefly to register everybody's vote. Commissioner Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Present. Approved.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you.
The motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrar Dyke. Next item on our agenda is public comments. We provide an opportunity for public comments at each of our meetings, and we will now ask if any members of the public who have joined our Zoom webinar would like to speak. Andrea, do we have any indication of anyone who would like to speak?
No, I have no hands raised.
Thank you.
Why don't we give it just a moment to make sure no hands go up?
Okay, I will pause to see if we have any public comments. Okay, hearing none, I would also remind everyone, including those of you watching on YouTube, that you can always report any concerns through our website, wmsc.gov, through our social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. Ms. Hogan, do we have anyone who has indicated that they would like to speak yet?
No.
Okay, thank you. We will now continue with the next agenda item. I would like to welcome everyone to the August public meeting of the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. I would especially like to welcome our new alternate commissioner, Ms. Victoria Wassmer. She was just confirmed by the DC Council, and we look forward to benefiting from her decades of experience at the Federal Aviation Administration, Federal Office of Management and Budget, DC City Administrator's Office, and elsewhere. She is currently a managing partner at Ernst & Young. I would also like to re-welcome Commissioner Bob, who has just been re-upped for a 4-year term as a DC representative on the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission. Mr. Bob, we've enjoyed and benefited from your service thus far, and we look forward to 4 more years of enjoying and benefiting from your service. Dr. Mayer, do you have any opening remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chair Hart. We have a number of investigations to present later in this meeting, and our staff has been working hard on a number of other fronts over the last several weeks. First, though, I'd like to provide updates on today's heavy rainfall, the rainfall overnight as well. We're monitoring any safety concerns related to water infiltration or flooding across the Metro Rail system. We've seen localized flooding across the region today, and this type of heavy rain in such a short period of time can exceed Metro's design expectations. Metro Rail closed the Cleveland Park Station today due to flooding concerns, and we appreciate that proactive step to avoid something like we saw in 2016 when customers were confronted by a waterfall as an escalator they tried to exit the station. The district government is working on longer-term improvements meant to provide some assistance in that area. Metro Rail also closed the south entrance to the King Street station today due to the storm and placed sandbags in key locations. So if you're an essential rider and in the system today, please be cautious and aware of your surroundings. In all of our work, WMSC staff continue to follow safety protocols regarding social distancing, and we're emphasizing the use of electronic data and remote interactions wherever possible. This remote access is due to become easier as our staff gets more direct access to Metro Rail's electronic systems. Such unfettered access is required by law. Still, there are times when in-person inspections or investigations are best. On July 7th, 2 WMSC experts immediately responded to the scene of a derailment on the Red Line in Silver Spring. They followed social distancing guidelines and gathered important information for the investigation. The WMSC participated in interviews with the train operator, rail controllers, and other Metro employees. We've also reviewed video, audio, and signal system recordings. The fact-finding portion of the investigation is largely wrapping up now, with the focus shifting to more detailed analysis of the evidence to develop a full understanding of why the derailment occurred and what steps could be taken to prevent a similar event from occurring in the future. The preliminary investigation shows that the operator of train 108, with 31 passengers aboard, moved the train past a red signal at the north end of the Silver Spring Station platform, just as the Rail Operations Control Center was sending a command to move the switch associated with that signal back to a normal or mainline position. Due to the timing of the train passing the red signal, the lead car diverged from the main line, heading into the pocket storage track there. Vehicle monitoring data and ATC engineering show that the switch moved under the train, derailing the lead trucks, the first wheel set of the second car. We are also investigating apparent radio equipment and communications failures following the derailment. The initial report of the derailment did not include the use and emphasis of the word emergency as required by Metrorail's radio protocols. On the day of the derailment, part of the Red Line had flooded near Woodley Park Station, so there was already an elevated workload that was exacerbated by the derailment. As the emergency response began, recordings from inside the rock show a controller was speaking and providing instructions, but those instructions did not properly transmit over the radios. It appears that this was due to an equipment failure, such as a defective microphone. Separately, the WMATA Office of Emergency Management employee who was functioning as the fire liaison on the day of the derailment did not properly communicate with first responders on the scene. Contributing to this, a backup cell phone connection to fire department radio systems was not available to that liaison at the location the rock was operating from at the time. The phone was at the main rock facility in Landover, but at the time of the derailment, the rock was operating out of Metrorail's headquarters building in downtown DC as part of an alternating shift schedule that was implemented due to the public health emergency. All customers were evacuated within about 45 minutes of the derailment, and no one was hurt. Our investigation will continue to look into the causes and exact timing of the actions in this event and what safety improvements could be made to prevent a recurrence. On the day of the derailment, Metrorail was using its own OEM staff, that's Metro's Office of Emergency Management staff, to fill the fire liaison position due to changes made due to the public health emergency. Regular staffing of the fire liaison position by uniformed officers of local fire departments resumed on July 19th. Also on July 19th, Metrorail ended alternating rock shifts between the two control center facilities and also ended alternate day schedules for most maintenance workers. Metrorail has informed us that they plan to use those maintenance workers to attempt to catch up on maintenance work or required inspections that have been deferred in recent months. Metrorail also plans to restore some rail service across the system on August 16th. This includes more regular train frequencies, a partial restoration of service hours, and the reopening of Silver Line stations in Virginia. It will also be the end of rotating shorter-term shutdowns that have been conducted this summer, including the current shutdown of part of the Red Line. Additional Orange Line stations that have been closed since May for platform work are scheduled to open around Labor Day. The WMSC is overseeing Metrorail's safety certification process for reopening these stations. The WMSC is also overseeing Metrorail's practices regarding the return of rail cars to service that had been shut down due to the health emergency. When our inspections or investigations identify concerns tied to the use of facial coverings or similar health-related issues, we do quickly share those instances with Metrorail for them to address. And we continue our oversight work related to Silver Line Phase 2. In the coming months, we will be conducting pre-revenue service reviews that track the fixes to issues that have already been raised that we will identify as the project is turned over to Metrorail and then readied for riders. We are in regular communication with MWA, the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, and WMATA. MWA has committed to addressing the observations that were contained in our fire life safety assessment that we formally transmitted in June. MWA hopes construction can reach substantial completion around the end of this year. Metrorail would then take custody of the line, which would lead to the second part of our pre-revenue service review. Among our focus areas for that review of WMATA's readiness to open the line to customers will be whether Metrorail has adequate staffing and training in place to run the line safely. Metrorail provided a response to us last week that outlined some of the current hiring efforts and planning assumptions, and we continue to seek additional information on this front. One area that could pose a particular concern to the WMSC is staffing and training in the Rail Operations Control Center. As you know, safety issues in the ROC have caused significant concern for us over the past year or so. After months of direction from the WMSC, Metrorail's latest draft corrective action plan linked to our finding from last December on the dysfunction and chaos in the ROC appears to have moved in the right direction. In May, we issued findings on rushed, unsafe power restoration, remote manipulation of controller consoles, and a lack of understanding of ventilation fan operations. After follow-up discussions with WMATA, Metrorail reassigned the ROC director in late June to a different position within the agency. Metrorail has also committed to increased involvement in ROC changes at the general manager and WMATA board level. This is proceeding in part through a review led by an internal transformation team, which will remain in close contact with the WMSC. Our months of audit work on the ROC is now substantially complete, and we hope that our extensive findings will shape this transformation. We are sharing the draft ROC audit report with WMATA later this week, as required by our program standard, and we anticipate that we will finalize and release the report to the public in early September. Another significant responsibility for you as commissioners this fall will be the review and approval of WMATA's Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. The PTASP replaces Metrorail's System Safety Program Plan and must include a safety management systems approach, which has long been used in the aviation industry. Our staff have been in regular communication with Metro about the status and content of the PTASP to ensure that the final plan complies with all safety requirements. This week, we expect to receive a final substantive revision that we directed Metrorail to make. The WMSC plans additional rigorous reviews of this latest draft in the coming weeks, which will keep this plan on track for approval by WMATA in October and by the WMSC before the deadline currently set for the end of this year. An example of the safety management systems approach is open lines of communication to report safety concerns and decisive actions to address them. I want to praise WMATA's fire marshal for quickly correcting a concern that was recently brought to our attention by the member of the public through the WMSC's Safety Concern web portal. This web form is one of many ways customers, employees, contractors, and anyone else can get in touch with us to identify safety concerns in the Metrorail system. This particular email identified incorrect emergency exit signage on the platform at Reagan National Airport Station. You can see one of the images submitted to us on the left side of the screen. WMSC's experts reviewed the submission and quickly confirmed that the signage needed to be fixed because the center track is not an emergency exit pathway. We raised the issue with the fire marshal and the signs were corrected within 24 hours to read authorized personnel only. The corrected sign is on the right side, and in the picture on the right, you can more clearly see that it is affixed to an immovable gate that was never intended to be an emergency exit. Again, we thank the WMATA's fire marshal for quick response to correct this issue. I have some brief updates. So I would mention too that we take the safety concerns we receive on our web portal and our other information channels very seriously. And currently, as we sit here, we have no open safety concerns. All of the concerns that we've received have been tracked to resolution and closed out in our system right now. Switching gears a little bit, I do have some brief updates from actions from prior meetings of the commissioners. First, some of you will remember back in May 2019, the commissioners adopted the WMSC's first triennial Title VI or non-discrimination program. Since we last met, the FTA has notified us that it is reviewed and concurs with our Title VI plan, and our next Title VI submission is due on April 1st, 2022. Also, in May 2019, the commissioners adopted the WMSC's first triennial DBE goal methodology and DBE goal. The FTA has reviewed and concurs with our DBE goal and methodology, and we are on track to meet our goal. Our next DBE goal submission is due August 1st, 2022. Second, our annual reports that you approved at the June 18th meeting have been distributed to everyone as required by law, were sent to a number of other public officials, and are available to all on our public website. Finally, the update to the safety event notification matrix that you adopted last month has now been fully implemented as of July 1st. Our business process specialist, Lahiru Karunaratna, conducted a live remote training session for Metrorail safety officers prior to that implementation. Thanks to this comprehensive and well-delivered training, the hard work that went into developing the improved matrix and the first month of use has provided better data for tracking purposes and has made the notifications easier to use for both WMATA and the WMSC. The WMSC staff plans to review other parts of our program standard in the coming months. Sorry for such a long report, but I'm now finished and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer, for that report. Are there any questions from the commissioners or alternate commissioners for Dr. Meyer? Okay, hearing none, I will move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the consent agenda. The commissioners have had an opportunity to review safety event investigation reports E-ECHO 19675 and E-ECHO 19661. These reports cover situations where individuals intentionally place themselves in the path of a train. Although by FTA regulation, this is classified as an accident, the events were not accidental. Consequently, we have placed these reports on a consent agenda. Does any commissioner wish to ask questions about either of these reports? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt both reports. Ms. Foltz, should I do that separately or together?
You can handle them together. They're listed on the agenda as being grouped.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to adopt both of these reports.
So moved. Second.
We hear a motion. Is there a second? We hear a second.
Second.
I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Hart.
Approve.
Commissioner Bob.
Approved.
Commissioner Contestable.
Approved.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrar Dyke.
Approved.
Commissioner Hull.
Approved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The motion carries.
Thank you. These reports are adopted and will be placed in our public website. We will now move on to other safety event investigation reports that are up for adoption today. Mr. Jermaine Walker, our subject matter expert for track and structures, will present our first reports.
Thank you, Chair Hart. The investigation of E19354 involves the derailment. Excuse me, my screen went blank here for a second. Sorry about that. The investigation E19354 involves the derailment of a contractor high rail vehicle during last summer's blue and yellow line shutdown in Virginia. A high rail vehicle is one that has both regular rubber tires for travel on the streets and railroad wheels for travel on the tracks. The investigation found the rear truck of this high rail vehicle derailed in a Van Dorn Street interlocking on the blue line as the operator was attempting to move from the track 1 platform across the track 2 on July 8th, 2019. Metro Rail's contractor reported that the vehicle was going about 2 miles per hour at the time of the derailment. The point of derailment was about 20 feet from the switch point. There were no injuries reported. There were challenges in this investigation due to Metro Rail's reliance on a contractor for much of the internal investigation of this incident. The contractor also re-railed the vehicle before a safety officer arrived, and the notification process was delayed. The WMSC wants to make clear that Metro Rail remains ultimately responsible for the timely notification of the WMSC and the proper investigation of all safety events on Metro Rail property, regardless of whether they involve employees, contractors, customers, or others. The WMSC has oversight of the entirety of the Metro Rail system, including areas that are under construction. Still, with the information available, the investigation does show that the rear road tires likely climbed the guardrail at the switch, leading to the derailment. A review found that the airbags on the underside of the vehicle were significantly overinflated. They were above 40 PSI when they should be under 20 PSI, which could have also caused the vehicle to lean. There was no procedure in place to check the pressure of the airbags or to check the pressure before the vehicle moved. As corrective actions, Metro Rail said the contractor would correct the airbag pressure on this vehicle and include check-in airbag pressure on future vehicle checklists. The contractor also offered at Metro Rail's request and the WMSC's insistence to establish a protocol to handle future derailments.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. So what kind of, I have a question before I open it up to the other commissioners. What kind of challenges did you run into by virtue of having an investigation in which a contractor played a significant role?
With this particular accident, just slow in getting information, with the investigation being done mainly by the contractor and not by Metro Rail themselves.
Is there a protocol on how that should be happening?
Say that again, Chairman Hart.
Is there any protocol on how that should be happening in the case of contractor involvement? Because I assume we're going to see that frequently.
Now, I want to say now that there's more of a protocol as far as more activity with Metro Rail taking more of a proactive approach. The protocol previously was just a contractor in that location because there wasn't active Metro Rail work going on in that location. It was mainly contractors. So basically the contractors had the responsibility of anything that went on in that work location, including an investigation if they had a derailment.
Okay, thank you. Now let me open it up to any other commissioners. Any questions from any of the other commissioners?
I think I would point out, if you don't mind, Chair Hart, that in the grand scheme of things, these high rail derailments that we're going to discuss first today are fairly minor in the grand scheme of events that could occur on the system. If something more major, particularly a fatality, occurred in a construction site, I would expect both Metro Rail Safety Department as well as us to be directly involved in the investigation. Okay,
thank you, Dr. Meyer. That's very helpful. Any questions from any of the commissioners regarding this report? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt investigation report Echo 19534. Anybody move to adopt it?
Move approval.
Okay, any second?
Second.
Ms. Foltz, would you please take roll call?
Thank you. Commissioner Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. We will now move on to the next investigation report. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Hart. Echo 19450 is another contractor high rail vehicle derailment and last summer's blue and yellow line shutdown area. In this case, on August 27th, 2019, around 10:35 p.m., the high rail vehicle derailed at a switch near the entrance to the Alexandria rail yard. The vehicle was returning to the yard from the area of Van Dorn Street. The investigation found that the rear rubber tire of the vehicle made contact with and rode up on the inside of the rail of the switch, lifting the vehicle and causing a derailment. Metro Rail's contractor reported the vehicle was traveling at a walking speed of a few miles an hour. Metro Rail ATC was at the location, setting switches manually. They identified no damage to the switch due to the derailment. There were no injuries in this incident. Again, Metro Rail left its internal investigation of this incident to the contractor. In this case, required notifications and communications were made in a much more timely fashion, following the concerns we had expressed about the prior derailment.
Thank you for that report, Mr. Walker. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding that report?
Yes, it's Greg Hall here. Just curious as to what actually caused the derailment. I understand that the rear rubber tire of the vehicle made contact with the inside of the rail of the switch, but was it determined why that happened?
I don't have that right in front of me, Commissioner, but I can get it to you after the meeting as far as what may have actually caused it.
Okay, thank you.
Did any recommended improvements come out of this report?
Based on the information that we have, so far there was really not like one particular area you can really point a finger at and say, well, it was this that caused this derailment. So that information was just not, it's just not something that at this time I could really like say.
I wouldn't want to suggest that it's okay for vehicles on a rail system to derail, but I would point out that high rail vehicles are probably the most prone to derailments in a system because of their hybrid nature of being rubber tired vehicles, also with, you know, retrofitted to operate on steel wheels as well, being propelled by the rubber tires. It's a complicated interface, and it doesn't always work just perfectly.
Okay, thank you for that background, Dr. Meyer. Are there any further questions from any of the commissioners regarding this report? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Echo 19450? I will move adoption of report Echo 19450. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approved.
Commissioner Hull,
Approved.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The motion carries.
Okay, thank you for that. General Counsel Fultz. Now we will move to the next investigation report. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours once again.
Sure. Echo 19454 is of a derailment and an interlock in Franconia, Springfield on August 30th, 2019 at approximately 4:36 in the PM. A contractor flat car derailed in the summer shutdown zone on the Blue Line. Although the switches appear to have been in a proper position for the move, the contractor's report described the axle as chattering, then hopping off the track in an interlocking. You can see in the photo on the bottom right of the slide, an arrow pointing to the point of derailment, and a circle showing the wheels sitting on the track bed. In the photo, you can see the chain marker location and the load on the flat car. Normally, this type of a flat car is not permitted in the Metro Rail system, but Metro Rail made an exception to allow this type of flat car in the summer shutdown area. The flat car has a rigid frame with no suspension, which could have contributed to the derailment. Metro Rail failed to notify the WMSC of the derailment before the car was re-railed. In part, this is because Metro Rail's safety department also did not get the opportunity to respond to the scene before the vehicle was moved. This again limited the investigation. This derailment occurred 3 days after the Alexandria yard derailment we just discussed, and there were no injuries and no track damage reported. The unit involved was removed from the Metro Rail property. This portion of the Blue Line reopened about a week later.
Thank you, Mr. Walker, for that report. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners regarding this latest report?
I take it the reason why the car is not allowed on the system is because of being prone to derailing. Is that why?
It could have been because of the suspension system.
Yeah.
Out of the photo, you saw it sat pretty low, and due to the description of what they described before it derailed, it doesn't say that in this case, but in my experience, the possibility might have existed that it might have been a brake applied on that rear axle. We don't know that, but just in my experience, that's what the experience would tell me.
So there were no actual policy changes as a result, and this is a very inconsequential accident. So it's just a question of looking into it. Not much happened. Just go on. It's really kind of the assessment of this incident. John wants to say something. John, you're muted.
Thank you.
He's got to jump in.
I would, these last few incidents, while minor in nature, and I understand, the probability of what caused the derailments. There's a bit of a troubling trend in the sense that they're contractor vehicles and notification to us wasn't timely. I would ask the staff to look into what is the contractual requirement under WMATA contracts for notification of accidents and incidents. In other words, if it's one of the terms and conditions in a WMATA contract that any kind of accident or derailment would be reported, then that gives you contractual teeth to ensure that the contractor does the right thing. So I haven't pored over the terms and conditions of a WMATA contract recently, but I would suggest that the staff do that to see what kind of requirements are imposed on these contractors. And if there is nothing in there regarding them reporting accidents and incidents, suggest that be included in future contracts.
That's not a bad suggestion there, Commissioner Contestable. I would point out that these events occurred during last summer's shutdown in Metro's first time using an ACS, an authorized construction site. And I think some entities within Metro were believing that that construction site would free both Metro and the WMSC from any responsibility to investigate incidents. So sort of the planning that went into that really didn't anticipate the level of investigation that we were going to require, and our compact certainly provides us authority to ensure that investigations are done. So this was sort of the first time through an ACS and through our direct and frequent involvement with Metro last summer. I believe that some improvements and changes have been made in the way things are handled to date. But if Ms. Samara Singha wishes to jump in and say anything about that, she'd be welcome to.
Dr. Maya, I think you covered the entirety of the considerations when it came to the authorized construction zones or ACSs. This was a exotic formulation last year when Metro started utilizing that as a mechanism for doing extensive construction and rehabilitation work throughout the Metro rail system. There has been significant improvements from last year to this year in the way that Metro approaches these, as the commissioners as well as the public will now recall. The Orange Line is undergoing a similar formulation for extensive rehabilitation work. There has been progress made from lessons learned from last year to this year, but as with everything else, it's a continuum, and there are areas that Metro will be required to continue to improve upon when it comes to how they manage authorized construction zones and investigations that arise within those.
Thank you very much for those explanations, Dr. Meyer and Ms. Samara Singha. But I would add to Commissioner Contestable's comment that it was a surprise to me that not even Metro Rail Safety Department had the opportunity to respond to the scene before the vehicle was moved. So to the extent you look into this, I would also look into notification of Metro itself and the ability of Metro to be there, or at least have the option to say we don't need to be there before any movement takes place.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yes, please, Commissioner Bob.
Yeah, in the event of a damage to the rail system by one of these vehicles by a contractor, does the contractor assume the responsibility for any damages, or is it on Metro Rail?
That's more of a question that would go to liability and insurance, and not something we would have directly looked into.
Okay, thank you.
Typically, that would be addressed by their contract, but I can't say in this specific instance. That's a good question. Are there any more questions from the commissioners regarding this report? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report E19454?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
thank you, and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. Motion carries.
Thank you for that. We will now move on to the next investigation report. Mr. Walker, back to you.
Thank you again, Chair Hart. Excuse me. Echo 19509 is a derailment of a contractor high-rail vehicle in the West Falls Churchyard. This occurred on September 26, 2019 at approximately 4:19 in the a.m. The vehicle had been on the mainline tracks for overnight ultrasonic rail testing. During that testing, the work crew smelled burnt rubber and saw a tire that had become flat. And just finished testing a final 300 feet or so of rail. They would not have been able to repair the flat tire on the roadway, so they had to move the vehicle back to West Falls Church Rail Yard. By the time the derailment occurred, the flat tire had been shredded and there was damage to the rim. The rail at the point of derailment also showed significant side wear. There were no reported injuries. Corrective actions for this derailment include putting the spare tire and rim on a unit so that repairs can be made in the field in the future prior to moving the vehicle. The unit was repaired, re-inspected, and approved for operation again on Metro Rail property a few weeks after the derailment.
Thank you for that report. Mr. Walker, I open it up now to questions from any of the commissioners. Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adopt investigation report Echo 19509. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The motion been made and seconded. I will now ask General Counsel Fultz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you all very much. The motion carries.
Thank you. Mr. Walker, we must stop meeting like this, but we'll now move on to the next investigation report. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. Investigation Echo 19563 covers a collision in a New Carrollton rail yard on October 23rd, 2019. The white Metro Rail van you can see on the left was struck by the flat car you can see on the right as the van moved through the grade crossing closest to the entrance on the yard to the yard. The flat car was being shoved by a prime mover, with the equipment operator and the flag person on the rail vehicles. The flat car was stopped at the crossing for approximately 20 seconds. The investigation, supported by CCTV footage, finds that the van driver continued through a stop sign at the grade crossing as the flat car began to move forward. In an interview after the collision, the van driver indicated that he interpreted the flag person's proceed signal given to the equipment operator with a flashlight instead as a proceed signal for him to move the van through the crossing. The flat car hit the driver's side of the van, but the driver of the van declined medical transport to the hospital. The van was totaled and sent to a scrapyard. The van was purchased in 2012 for just over $28,000. Corrective actions for this incident include a lessons learned document specifically for ATC employees and a Metro Rail wide safety bulletin that highlights roadway grade crossing safety and related rules. Metro Rail policies require compliance with all posted signs in rail yards, including stop signs. Rail vehicles always have the right of way, and all other vehicles like vans or cars are required to yield to all rail vehicles. At roadway grade crossings, drivers are required to stop and confirm that the path is clear. Equipment operators and flag persons are required to use positive radio communication when crossing the roadway. Flag persons must remain in a position of safety in the flag person's booth and be prepared to activate the emergency brake valve. Vehicle operators are required to sound their horns before crossing. One corrective action on this event that has yet to be completed is a defense driving course for the van driver. He was not permitted to participate in the December class because it was overbooked, and a later class in March was postponed due to the health emergency. An ATC maintenance assistant superintendent said the mechanic will be scheduled for a class when they resume.
Thank you for that report. I have a question. So would those classes include the meaning of the signs? Because apparently there was misinterpretation of a signal.
I would hope so, Chairman. One would certainly hope so.
Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners? Hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report E19563?
So moved.
Thank you for the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approved.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. We will now move on to the next investigation report, which will be presented by the Washington Metro Rail Safety Commission's subject matter expert for operations, the other Mr. Walker, Mr. Bruce Walker. Mr. Bruce Walker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Hart. Investigation Echo 20007 covers a collision in the car maintenance service and inspection shop in the Shady Grove Rail Yard on January 4th, 2020. A 4-car train was being operated from the third car after a train operator had problems operating the consist from the lead car. The investigation found it may have been possible to work with car maintenance to avoid the third car operation. Due to the operation of the train from the third car, another train operator was positioned in the lead car as a flag person. The train operator performed safety stops approaching the shop, but vehicle data shows that the safety stops were not performed in the shop itself. The train moved 184 feet without safety stops. As the train approached the stationary rail cars, the flag person communicated on the radio multiple times that the train operator should stop the train. The train operator later said that he did not hear the communication, but follow-up radio checks found no communication issues in the area. The train continued to move until it hit and coupled with the stationary car. The flag person did not activate the emergency brakes to stop the train prior to the collision. The investigation found that there was no communication between the interlocking operator and car maintenance about the train entering the shop being operated from the third car. The investigation also found gaps in Metrorail's policies and procedures regarding third car operations. There was no significant damage and no injuries as a result of this collision. Among the corrective actions following the collision, Metrorail's transportation and car maintenance offices must revise the procedures tied to SOP 12. That SOP governs movement of rail cars into maintenance facilities. These revisions must include clear roles and responsibilities for train operators and a requirement that car maintenance personnel be in a position to communicate with the train operator in a third car operation through the window of the train in case radio communications fail. Rail training must also be updated so that the syllabus for the third car operation covers all SOP 12 rules and procedures. Both the train operator and flag person in this safety event completed an 8-hour re-instruction course.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. I'm going to need some help, however, on understanding how you operate a train from the third car. Could you explain that?
Absolutely, Chairman Hart. In the event that the vehicle is not able to operate from the lead car, in order to allow the car to move forward, you have to go back to the next forward-facing car, which will be the third car back, or possibly the fifth car if the third car is not operating. At that point, you position someone in the lead car to act as the visual for the train operator in the third car. In the third car, the operator can only see the car that's in front of him or her. At that point, there is communication established between the flag person in the lead car and the operator of the vehicle from the third car. They are to be in constant communication, and then it's called the proceed method, where they will then every 3 to 5 seconds say the word proceed, which will then allow the train operator in the third car to operate. In the event that there is an emergency situation, the operator or flag person in the lead car has an emergency mushroom that they can depress that can bring the train to a stop need be. And in the incident that happened, when communication was lost, the train operator was responsible for stopping the train when communication was lost between the flag person and the train operator. And the flag person in the lead car should have depressed the emergency mushroom when he realized that the operator in the third car back didn't appear to be stopping timely. So there was a breakdown in communication. Does that answer your question, Chairman Hart?
Yes, that's very helpful. So the way this is supposed to work is if I don't hear from you in 3 seconds, I stop.
That is correct. 3 to 5 seconds is the governing rule.
Okay, and so what do we know about why the person up front who's seeing everything did not hit the emergency brake?
Well, it was heard that the person was saying to stop the train, but the train operator during his interview, or I should say their interview, stated that they did not hear the communication to stop the train and continued pushing the vehicle because they did not hear that they were to stop the train. So there was a complacency and a breakdown where the flag person did have the ability to prevent the accident and coupling.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners regarding this?
Yes. So Bruce, was there a consideration of distraction? Let's say, could there have been a distracted device being used? Was it consideration of fatigue? I mean, is there a theory as to why the communication wasn't received and acted upon?
The train operator during the interview stated that they did not hear the command to stop. And there was also, during the investigation, they went back to investigate the radio communication in that area, and it was found that communication was actually working as it should be.
Right.
During all investigations, to answer your final question, there is the question that is brought up about distraction based on electronic device policy. We have at the WMSC strengthened our position recently with respect to the use of electronic device policy that was not in place at that time.
So when you say you've strengthened it, so if this accident were to occur today, what would take place with respect to consideration of a potential for use of a distracting electronic device?
The WMATA would have the ability to request the actual records from the carrier if they determine that there was the potential for distraction. At this time, WMATA could only request that the operator share their phone records. Request versus subpoena.
Okay, thanks, Bruce.
Yes, Commissioner Rush.
Any further questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report E20007?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Okay. Commissioner Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approved.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approved.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approved.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. We will now move on to the next investigation report. Again, back to you, Mr. Bruce Walker.
Thank you, Chairman Hart. Investigation Echo 19431 is a collision between two out-of-service trains near the Largo Town Center Station. On August 15, 2019, around 2:45 p.m., a train operator moved a 7000 series train from the station to the tail tracks or storage tracks just beyond the station. After performing 2 of the required 4 safety stops, the train accelerated to more than 10 miles per hour. The train operator then applied emergency braking approximately 2 seconds before colliding with the stationary 3000 series train. The 3000 series train was stored near the bump post at the end of the tail tracks. The investigation shows the moving train was going about 5.8 miles per hour at the time of the collision. This moved the stationary train approximately 1 foot. The train operator reported the collision but attempted to alter the scene. In violation of Metrorail rules, the train operator entered the stationary train and keyed it up or turned it on and attempted to decouple the trains. This action was not successful, and investigators arrived at the scene a short time later. This collision damaged couplers, anti-climbers, and shear bolts on the train sets. The investigation also identified a number of other safety concerns. Video indicates that the train operator was wearing a smartwatch in violation of the electronic device policies. Following the event and the October 7, 2019 collision near Farragut West, the WMSC required Metrorail to improve enforcement of and monitoring of compliance of its electronic device policy. The new policy has been issued and Metrorail is now required to conduct random compliance checks. In this case, video also shows the train operator used the sun visor built for the 7000 series train to block the inward-facing cameras in a deliberative way. In fact, the investigation found that the train operator blocked the camera with the sun visor at least 3 times on the trip that led to the collision and the trip prior to the collision. This was another example of an issue our inspectors had identified in the weeks prior of the sun visor being used to block the inward-facing cameras. Metrorail's car maintenance team identified the problem independently as well and began to work to address the issue. In the weeks after the collision last summer, the WMSC ordered a corrective action plan to prevent this from happening in the future by retrofitting the sun visors. We highlighted this issue in our September 2019 public meeting. Replacement of the 7000 series sun visors have been slowed somewhat due to parts availability. As of the end of May, the replacements had been completed on 208 out of the 374 7000 series cabs. The work is currently expected to be completed by the end of this year. Metrorail must also incorporate the sun visor change into the 8000 series procurement. Other corrective actions arising from this collision include a notice of WMATA's personnel highlighting the importance of safety stops and the redistribution of WMATA's electronic device policy.
Thank you for that report. That's very interesting that the manufacturer of the car and the manufacturer of the camera didn't work together to make sure that the sun visor wouldn't block it. That's pretty obvious potential problem, but so thank you for that report. Are there any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Echo 19431?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hart,
Approved.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the final investigation report under consideration today, this time back to Mr. Jermaine Walker. Mr. Walker, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman Hart. Investigation Echo 19557 pertains to a serious employee injury on a red line that occurred last October in the afternoon of October 19, 2019. A Metrorail production renewal crew was working on track 2 between DuPont Circle and Woodley Park Station. This work requires threading a rail, which is a method of moving pieces of rail into and out of position. The rail pieces used are referred to as stringer rail. As you see in this example photo from another rail system, a large machine is used to move the rail into place. The maintenance vehicle grabs the rail with the threading tongue you see on the right. The long pieces often called our continuous welded rail, a single uninterrupted piece that can stretch an entire length between insulated joints. If the rail is installed in smaller pieces, those pieces then can be welded together. In this case, part of a 1,200-foot long section of stringer rail that they had just removed tipped over and fell on 2 workers' feet. You can see from the arrow in the picture here the direction that the rail fell. The distance between the old rail and the new rail varied over the length of the incident area. One worker who the rail fell on had minor bruising, while the other suffered 4 broken bones in the foot. Both workers were wearing the required footwear at the time. Co-workers used sledgehammer handles to pry up the fallen rail and free one of the workers. Doing that led to the rail falling higher up on the other worker's leg, near the ankle, knocking that worker down. The crew had to physically lift the rail to free that employee. The investigation finds these injuries happened because of the length of the section workers cut was not manageable. And because the workers began to clip the new rail in place when the vehicle moving the old rail was out of sight, not when the vehicle was moving the old rail had completed its work. Recordings revealed no radio communication between the equipment operator and the roadway worker in charge. There appears to have been no clear direction on when it would be acceptable to leave a point of safety and return to work. The workers returned to the new rail to begin clipping it after the maintenance vehicle moving the old rail disappeared around a curve about 900 feet away. As the equipment operator attempted to adjust the old rail around wooden forms left around grout pads due to prior concrete work, the old rail flipped on its side, wedging the feet of the 2 workers hundreds of feet away. The equipment operator had noted that the wooden forms prior to starting the work, but believed they would not pose any risk. Corrective actions from this event include revising and reviewing the work procedures for this task to address safety issues. This includes reviewing training information and processes. Tracker Structures employees also received the maintenance bulletin highlighting proper practices.
Thank you. It sounds like a serious piece of coordinating that did not happen. And so what kind of fixes were there in order to address better coordination?
When you go after going through the bulletin, more communication between the operator and the road worker in charge, or who's ever in charge of that work location, or overseeing the work being performed, and better safety techniques as far as who's going to control what, who's going to give the operator the equipment, the hand signals, and then also notifying the workers who's putting the rail together or putting it back in place, of when there's going to be movement and when to steer clear, and then when it's safe to get back in the track bed. Small items like that.
What's the learning on lengths of track that are manageable so that these kinds of things are less likely to happen?
Honestly, in my experience, the most manageable is in short lengths, whether you're talking about a small stick between that's 19 footer or 39 footer. Those are a little bit more manageable because those are short distances. When you get into these long lengths, that's when they could be get even more dangerous, if you will.
Right, as this accident showed, right. Thank you for that. Are there any questions from any of the other commissioners regarding this accident?
Yeah, I have a question. Is it advisable to suggest that WMATA ought to have a limit on the section of track length that could be removed? The other issue is they were around the corner and therefore not visible, so you had no sight, visible sight contact. So it strikes me that maybe some limit on length and visibility might be in order. Is that being considered by the WMATA staff?
Not that I'm aware of, but in my experience, I would say here mainly the communication was more of an issue than really the length of the rail, because where I've come from, I've done sizable pieces of rail, and as long as you have communication and good practices in place, you're not going to have this issue. So I would say it was more communication than the rail itself.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions from commissioners?
I have a question, Commissioner Hart, just in regards to structural integrity of the rail, given the length of the rail. Is there any balance that has to be made associated with continuous rail in relation to the ties.
Well, can you act like, I'm sorry, can you ask that question again? Like, you mean in relation to the ties and to the rail placement? What do you mean as far as?
Correct. I think if you have shorter segments, you end up having more connectors. And so I'm just wondering if some of the things that have to be balanced in terms of the structural integrity of the rail has to look at that as well.
So are you saying if it was like maybe if they did it maybe in shorter lengths as opposed to the length that they were placing it in?
Correct. I'm just saying that there's sort of a balance for in the experience that I've had looking at rail. This is on heavy rail for the continuity and integrity of the rail track in relation to the segmentation of it.
Honestly, I don't know if this will. You can do it in shorter lengths, but again, it would all depend. Like in this area, there were, if I know this location like I do, this location actually has fasteners as opposed to ties. So can you do it in shorter lengths? Yes, but that's just not that's just really not the practice. And when you're cutting up the old pieces of rail, you cutting it up in sections that can, various sections, whether it be 39 feet or whether it be longer, you're usually setting them up to where it's out of the way. And before you place your new rail, you're of course making sure the old rail is out of there. But you're not really gonna cut it, like depending on how it was rolled and came out, you're not really gonna cut it down unless you're having connectivity issues or you're gonna do any welding or anything like that. So the practice is never to really to put this in shorter lengths because you actually I don't want to say create issues, but you have to do, there'll be more labor work involved that you really didn't have to do doing it that way. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you.
I'm sorry if I went off in the left field.
Thank you. No, that was fine. Are there any other questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adopt investigation report Echo 19557?
So move.
Hear a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. The motion and a second. I will now ask General Counsel Foltz to conduct our recorded vote.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hart,
Approve.
Commissioner Bob,
Approve.
Commissioner Contestable,
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke,
Approve.
Commissioner Hull,
Approve.
and Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you very much. The motion carries.
Thank you. That completes our investigation reports. We will now take up the next agenda item, which is audits. Ms. Samara Singha, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Hart. We wanted to provide an update on the status of several audits and corrective action plans. First, the detailed draft audit report regarding the Rail Operations Control Center is now complete. We plan to transmit the draft to Metro this week for the 30-day review period for any technical errors that are provided for in our program standard. We expect to issue the final report in early September this year. We did issue 3 findings during the course of this Rail Operations Control Center audit work. On May 12th this year, the WMSC found controllers lacked required training on the use of tunnel ventilation fans, were rushed to restore third rail power even when it was not safe to do so, and were frequently experiencing remote manipulation of their consoles by management. We have provided extensive feedback to Metro Rail requiring improvements to their proposed corrective action plans that must address these findings that I just inventoried for you. And our December 20th finding that the ROCC, the Rail Operations Control Center, is chaotic and dysfunctional during the emergencies and unplanned events. So we are awaiting further fine-tuning of proposed corrective action plans for all of these findings. We believe that we are making some progress as Metro works to fine-tune a number of these proposed corrective actions. However, we have not yet approved these caps and continue to require important revisions to achieve the intended safety improvements in a way that will be both timely and lasting. On another front, the WMSC has begun the formal audit process of Metro Rail's bridges and elevated structures, maintenance and inspection practices. We moved this audit forward on our schedule due to concerns raised by other inspections and investigations. Initial document requests for this audit were sent to Metro last month. The WMSC staff plan to conduct significant parts of the audit work from the end of this month into the fall. Are there any questions?
Any questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, thank you, Ms. Samar-Senga. We will now move on to the next agenda item, which is resolutions. Dr. Meyer, do we have any resolutions for consideration today?
No, sir, we do not.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Next item is an executive session. Our bylaws at section 1G1(h) permit us to enter executive session for the purposes of the discussion or consideration of WMSC internal personnel matters. Before we do that, I would ask counsel to certify that in her opinion, the meeting may be closed to the public and to publicly state the applicable exempting provision of the Sunshine Act. Ms. Fultz?
Thank you, Chairman Hart. Yes, as set forth in 5 USC 552B paragraph C2, this item relates solely to internal personnel practices of the agency.
Thank you. A majority vote of the commissioners is required to enter into executive session. So I would now ask for a motion to enter executive session and adjourn the public meeting. Is there a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Fultz, could you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Commissioner Hart.
Approved.
Commissioner Bob.
Approved.
Commissioner Contestable.
Approve.
Commissioner Farrar Dyke.
Approve.
Commissioner Hull.
Approve.
And Commissioner Rush.
Approve.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Thank you. I would like to remind everyone that you can always report any Metro Rail safety concerns or otherwise get in touch through our website, wmsc.gov, through social media channels like Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or by email. This concludes our public meeting for today. Our next public meeting will be held on September 22nd. The meeting will again be held remotely via video conference. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.